Hello, welcome to our Global Tourism Outlook, a series of discussions that we have with our friends from Asia and Europe relative to trends in tourism. And the last couple of years have been very, very interesting, as we all know. And the three questions that we're going to focus on today are, the first two will focus on the ongoing policies regarding COVID and what travelers should expect upon going through the process and upon arriving at their destination. And then finally, what the war in Ukraine is going to do for travel, either directly or indirectly. Even though we may not be in its immediate vicinity, it certainly will have an effect on people's travel policies. So why don't we start first and foremost with the first question, and that is, what are the present policies and procedures in your area? You want to start, Justin?
Oh, sure. I'll go at first. Right now in Asia, especially in Southeast Asia itself, COVID restrictions are really going down. I mean, Asia is really opening up. Just to give everybody a quick overview, Thailand has actually opened its economy and its country to tourism already since February. And this has followed suit with Vietnam. Vietnam opened its doors to tourism on the 15th of March. And in Singapore and in Malaysia, they have also opened their doors to tourism since the 1st of April, which is, well, today. And in Singapore itself, there is now a policy that you do not need to wear your mask if you're outdoors. So I think things are looking very positive here in Asia. That's for Southeast Asia, but cases in Hong Kong and in China, it's still high. There's still a very high number of COVID cases rising. So I believe that in China and Hong Kong, things are pretty much closed for the time being. Hopefully things will recede over time. Yep, that's all I have to report on my end in Asia.
Great. Martine, how are the COVID policies and procedures in Europe as we speak?
Yes, so bonjour, hello everybody. So as far as Europe is concerned, as Justin mentioned, we face the same kind of policies. Restrictions are going down, and there is no need to wear a face mask in France, especially. And if you want to travel to Europe, you just only need to show a proof that you've been vaccinated. So it's really easy to travel now, and people are are not thinking that much about COVID anymore because we have a new hot topic going on in Europe. So we will speak about this later on.
Sounds great. And as far as the COVID policies here on our border, which have been interesting over the course of the 2 years.
Right. In the United States, as you know, the 50 states pretty much set their own policies, and New York has been probably one of the strictest. But our restrictions have also been lifted for the most part. Masks are rare now. Actually, I don't see very many masks anymore,
unless you're on a plane.
Right. Or in a hospital, or a healthcare facility. On the border. Today, Canada no longer requires proof of a negative test. That's a big step for us because the testing has been expensive in most cases, especially for Canadian tourists. They go back to their own country, they have to get a negative test, and their insurance doesn't cover it here a lot of times. Also, it has to be within 72 hours. So the free tests usually take more than 72 hours to get the results, so they don't do any good. That's why people have to pay for the test. So it's a big step today, not having to have a negative test. However, as Kurt alluded to, the requirements for being vaccinated remain in both countries. You must be vaccinated to enter. And as Kurt also alluded to, we're wondering if that may be a long-term situation here. It would appear to me that it might be, and maybe forever. We don't know that. But the other thing that's an issue is to go to Canada, there's an app. It's called ArriveCan, and you may be familiar with it all around the world because it's been in effect for quite some time. In airports, you need to fill out the ArriveCan app before you get on the airplane. And it works great in airports. It's worked great on the land border between the two countries because the volume has been low. But as the volume increases, because restrictions are being relaxed, we think that there may be problems at the border with the ArriveCan app because most Americans are not familiar with it. So if you're from Arkansas and you want a vacation to Canada, you probably don't think about filling out the ArriveCan app. Now, if you bought an airline ticket, obviously the airline will tell you. But if you're driving, you're going to get to the border and you're not going to have the ArriveCan app filled out. And then there's questions about how they're going to handle that if there's a lot of people, because where are they going to go to fill it out? And most of the land border, the heavily used land border crossings between the United States and Canada are here in the Great Lakes, and they usually involve water. Because there's water, we don't have a lot of land around to park cars and trucks to complete paperwork. So it's really important that it's completed ahead of time. And so far, Canada has not done a very good job of getting the word out in the United States that if you're going to come, we'd love to have you to come and be a tourist, but you must fill out the ArriveCan app before you come. So we're really worried about that. The other thing regarding proof of vaccination is that, in the United States, where I think over 15% of our population is not vaccinated and probably won't be. If they haven't been vaccinated by now, I don't think they're going to be vaccinated. So we've already knocked out 15% or more of the population that can be tourists internationally. So,
Or just one member of the family.
right. And we've had this situation after 9/11 when we used to cross the border here without proof of identity or nationality before 9/11. And after that, we required proof of identification and proof of nationality. And that means in most cases a passport. And there's a pretty large percentage of Americans, much larger in the United States than in most countries, of people that don't have passports. So now we've got that percentage of the population that can't travel to Canada or other places. Now we're adding on top of that another section of the population that can't travel. And the number of possible international tourists is going down in the United States.
The other kind of interesting thing, having looked at the sheet, is it asks you a couple of questions that require some planning on your part.
Well, yes, I filled out the ArriveCan app yesterday for a trip tomorrow to Canada, and I've decided not to take the trip tomorrow to Canada because it was cumbersome. And a lot of the questions appeared to me to be questions that related to having to prove a negative test. Well, of course, today I don't have to prove a negative test. Yesterday I did. Yesterday the app didn't contemplate the fact that I was going to travel on April 2nd and not need a test. So it became, and there were a lot of other questions. You have to have a quarantine plan, as Kurt said. And, if I'm going for lunch, I probably don't have a quarantine plan. And we're 7 blocks here from the border, so it was quite normal for me to travel to Canada 2-3 times a week before COVID. And now that seems to be really problematic. Having to fill out a laborious bunch of questions on an app, sure, just to go for lunch.
Can I ask a question relative to quarantining? If one were to test positive or one were to get ill and take a test, and how would that be dealt with in Vietnam, for instance? Justin, are you quarantined for a couple of weeks?
Well, I just got back to Vietnam from Singapore about a month back. When I came back, I had to quarantine myself. But right now, coming into Vietnam, you don't need to quarantine. And all you need to do prior to entering Vietnam is that you need to get a PRC test done, and you get into Vietnam, you show that you have been vaccinated, and you show a doctor's cert that proves that you have done a PCR test and you're free to go. So, but the problem is that if you look at the many countries here in Asia, is that there are so many different countries, so many different apps, and you have doctors who have got doctor's notes written about, let's say, a tourist who's done its PCR test. And I think a lot of the governments here are unable to really verify whether that doctor's note is it's authentic. So that's a bit of a problem here in Asia. But pretty much, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the countries here are open for tourism, and a lot of them need not have incoming tourists, inbound tourists, to be quarantined anymore.
Great. Martine, how about Europe? I guess if one were to come down with COVID there, are there policies that would be challenging for potential tourists?
So it seems that now when you are positive, you need to go in quarantine in your home and for not more than 5 days. So it's easy. And if you want to take the plane, this is what I did a few days ago. You just have to declare that you are not positive. You don't need to send a proof. It's only a box that you need to tick. So it's super easy. And if you are positive, you remain at home for 5 days, and that's it. So it's really easy. And it's when you want to travel abroad, you just only have to declare that you do not have any symptoms, and you need to tell that you feel safe and right and in good health conditions, and that's it. So it's super easy. But once again, it seems that Europe has becoming good friends with the new variant Omicron, BA2. So it seems that all of the people, they got this new variant, they got hit by this new variant, and it seems that it's now really a common disease. So it's not at all very heavy in terms of travel regulations. I will go next Monday I will travel to London with the students, and there is nothing really important, only a form to fill in and a proof that we have all been vaccinated, and that's it. So it seems that the majority of European people has been hit by COVID. So now everything is going back to kind of normal in Europe.
Great. Well, that's a perfect segue into the third question regarding tourism and travel, and that is, how is the situation in Ukraine, the war? How is that going to affect travel around the world, either directly or indirectly? Obviously, we're alluding to things like the increased costs of fuel. Justin, do you want to project into the future?
I reckon that the people who can travel to Europe or I mean, if you're traveling to other places in the globe, I think people are okay with that. I suppose people are also okay if they're traveling to Western Europe, which is not so much affected by the war itself. I think people have been closed in for the longest time. They've been locked in. They have had cabin fever, and regardless of whether there's a war or not, and this war it's a rather small scale war, people will still travel. But there are also other concerns as well. I mean, in terms of safety. So right now, it's just not only about the increase in fuel prices, but the issue of whether the plane that you're traveling on will get shot down. So a lot of countries, take for example, Vietnam, Vietnam Airlines from Vietnam itself, it's not flying to Russia anymore or to Ukraine for the fear that their planes will get shot down. So they are diverting their flights away from that war zone area. And if you're asking me whether it's going to affect tourism, I would say definitely it will affect, because Vietnam has a huge travel market from Russia because of the political similarities of Vietnam and Russia itself. So I reckon that because of the travel restrictions, purely in the face of safety, people are not traveling because they can't get a flight to Vietnam from Russia or from Ukraine itself.
Martine, how about in Europe, where it's more immediate and more in people's minds, and they're reading about it in the newspapers every day?
It is in every people's mind, obviously, and we've got severely hit in terms of our mood, values, and thoughts about the future, obviously. So it was super shocking for us to see and to acknowledge that there was a war going on in Europe. It was something which was really unbelievable. So we had to deal with it. So this is why COVID has become something which is back in our minds. For the moment, we are at the top. We have war in Ukraine, which is something, once again, unbearable and unbelievable. What I would like to highlight here is the fact that we have various indicators going in every direction. So people tend to reduce their expenses for traveling because inflation is skyrocketing. That's crazy. Inflation is our main concern here in Europe. So obviously the budget for traveling is going down. On the other side, on the other hand, we have a willingness to going out because it's spring and we want to have fun because the period has been is probably one of so chaotic and so complex that we want to party and have fun and to mingle with others. So we have indicators going in every direction. On top of that, we have migrants reaching Europe, migrants coming from Ukraine. So we are doing whatever we can in order to welcome them, in order to find them jobs, in order to find them a place to live and a place to feel secure. So it's almost all over the place, and I am a bit old. I'm in my 50s, and I haven't lived in such a chaotic world, such a complex world. So sometimes we want to have fun and party. Sometimes we want to travel again, but sometimes, you know, the situation arises and hit us in our minds. So it's super, super complex. On top of that, once again, when we speak in terms of purely hospitality, the hospitality line and the catering and food and beverage, we face a shortage of labor force, and that's another challenge that needs to face. So we are all over the place, facing so many problems that I really don't know how we're going to handle the situation. Really.
Yeah, I think as the war has also affected our country as well, particularly with respect, we were already experiencing inflation prior to that, but I think that's been increased as a result of the fuel prices. So in terms of fuel prices, I would say that what we've now encountered is more people traveling domestically than we had before. So the families that used to travel with passports to other countries are now experiencing the United States by way of cars. I do think that the pent-up kind of wanting to get out is also apparent here in the United States, but our guess is that they're probably going to be doing that within the country as opposed to outside of the country. So we are well positioned here in Niagara Falls, I think, and the perception around the tourism professionals with whom we interact is that this should be a strong summer. As far as overseas travel, it may pick up because of the aforementioned pent-up kind of desire to travel elsewhere.
Yep.
But we're anticipating that those airfares are going to be very, very expensive. And of course, we've all grown to realize that perception of safety is probably more influential than what may actually be happening. So if there's a war in Europe, the perception is parts of Europe are unsafe, so maybe we should stay in our country again this year or drive. So it's going to be interesting to monitor, and of course, we'll continue to do that through our process here. But the anticipation is that domestic travel, families by car, and they're going to have to save a little bit more because gas prices have gone up, food prices have gone up. And my guess is that even hotels will probably be a little bit more expensive this year because of their costs. We could have our own separate dialogue on the workforce within the tourism industry, and perhaps we should do that moving forward because we're seeing some similar patterns, Dr. Ferry, here as far as trying to staff hospitality related entities, whether they be hotels or restaurants or even theme parks and other things that are going to be catering to what we anticipate is a rising demand of domestic tourists. So that'll be interesting as well. But it's been wonderful to see you. I think the next time we'll be chatting will be related to STR data, and that'll be interesting to kind of look at and to see if the trends post-COVID, and I think we're sort of feeling like we're living in a post-COVID world now.
Yes.
Whether the patterns start going back to pre-COVID years. So that'll be interesting. As is always the case, it was wonderful to see you, and we'll look forward to doing this again quite soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Merci.
you.
Bye.
So nice seeing you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. See you, everybody.